We are very thankful for their great insights on some of the basics of scientific writing, and they were very helpful for us and very enriching talks. With that, today, with the blessings of Almighty, we begin with the sessions that are lined up for today. We have some fantastic lineup of speakers where we have Professor R.K. Bansal, Professor Masaki Yoshifuji, Professor Ayan Datta, and Professor S.T. Salmon, who are going to apprise us with their wonderful insights on the nuances of scientific writing. So, I extend a warm welcome to all the delegates who have joined us today again and who are new today from India and abroad. And it gives me immense pleasure to take this platform to thank all the delegates and all the speakers who are here with us today. We are also streaming live on YouTube, and the link will be posted in the chat box very soon. You can check out our YouTube channel as well. Now, to introduce our first speaker for the technical session 2, it is indeed my proud privilege to invite Professor R.K. Bansal, who is currently serving as the Emeritus Professor at the IIS deemed to be University, Jaipur. In his illustrious research career spanning over 50 years, Professor Bansal has published around 200 research papers, authored several books, and has supervised over 40 research scholars. Professor R.K. Bansal is a fellow of the prestigious Humboldt Foundation and is a life member of a number of renowned academic bodies of the country. A recipient of the Atmaram Award for Popularizing Science, Sir has also received the Best Teacher Award from ACT in the year 2014. I now invite Professor Bansal for his much awaited talk on common mistakes in writing a research paper that I'm sure will immensely benefit the aspiring researchers and at the same time will allow all of us to critically evaluate our manuscripts that we wish to publish. Now I hand over the screen space to Sir to enrich and to help us with his words of wisdom. Sir.
Thank you, Chandni, for your kind introduction. At the very outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this webinar, particularly Professor Rakhi Gupta, Professor Prabhu, Professor Pare, and others for inviting me to give this talk. I have been associated with Association for Chemistry Teachers for the last few years, and I have seen their total dedication to popularizing chemistry among students and teachers as well. It is rather incredible to see that how Professor Prabhu can motivate so many people, not only from one place, from almost all corners of India, for popularizing this chemistry. I have seen that in association with NCCT, they prepare students for Olympiad, and on many occasions, our students have brought laurels. So once again, I congratulate Professor Prabhu and his team for doing a very good work. When Professor Rakhi invited me to give this talk, I was given the choice to select my topic of talk. Then I thought that I have been writing research papers and reviewing the research papers for almost 5 decades, starting my teaching career in 1968. And I thought that it will be rather good for our younger research scholars and colleagues if I share some of my experiences, both as a writer and as well as reviewer, so that they can follow some tips for improving their writing and for, writing a research paper. Now, let me show you where is my this. Okay. Yes. Now, my topic is common mistakes in writing a research paper.
So your screen is not visible to us. It is just your Gmail screen which is visible here.
What about this?
So you
So
have to
you
share the PPT, open PPT and then share PPT.
I had already opened this. Okay.
If
so you can reshare.
Wait 1 minute. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Join a meeting. Am I visible to you?
So you are visible, but your screen that you're sharing is not the one where PowerPoint presentation is open.
So what should I do?
So you
This
should
is
reshare. You can.
okay. New share. Okay. No. Hmm. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, if I do slide show, it will be okay. Let me see. Can you
Yes, sir.
see
It
now?
is. Yes, sir.
Oh,
Perfectly
sorry.
all right.
I am not so perfect. I am an old man now, and therefore, please excuse me. Now, I selected this
Not
common
visible.
mistake in writing research papers. Now, the first point is that one should carefully see the format of the journal. Often I find that the people have not followed the format of the journal. There are few points which one should keep in mind. Now, for example, title. Different journals have different formats of the title. I give you 2, 3 examples. For example, in this case, reinvestigation of tandem dimerization, there is uppercase, lowercase. But in every word, there is uppercase. Now, I give you the second example. Just see, this is the running matter. Tandem Michael addition and regioselective cyclization in the reaction of ethyl anthranilate with acetylenic esters. This is running matter. And third, just see all capital letters. So all these 3 formats, as you can see, are different, and one should be careful to follow the correct format, because right from the beginning, if you start in the wrong manner, then the reviewer or the chief editor himself or herself may feel irritated that you are not careful. The first point is title. Then again, you can see, then we proceed further. The second point is abstract. Writing the caption of abstract is also different in different journals. You can see there are three formats of writing abstract: all capital or running matter, and all capital, bold or simple. Then the next is introduction. Introduction also, there are different formats: all capital with number, now running matter, and running matter with number. So you have to see this. Better you write, this have a sample paper and then you start writing this. Now then, citing of reference in the text. Different journals follow different formats. I have shown here 4 formats which are all different. For example, in our earlier reviews on annihilated edge of phosphorus, and this is superscript, and after comma. Then the second is, just see, this is in the square bracket here, and just before this full stop, this reference is given in square bracket. Then this is the third one. The third one, you are not able to see this. 1 minute. This is like this. After full stop and then square bracket. You can appreciate all the 3 formats are different and you should be careful. I remember one incident. After writing the manuscript, I sent this, and finalizing, I sent it to one of my students, and the format of the journal was like this before full stop, but she made all the corrections. She put all the, references after the full stop. And naturally, I was angry and she had to face my scolding. Then reference style. Different journals follow different reference styles. Just see, now this is one style. This is surname first, then followed by initials and so on. And this is journal name is italics. Then this is this. The second. Now it is very interesting that there is no dot, full stop anywhere, simply comma and this. This is entirely different. This is the volume number, no italic, no bold, and no full stop. Then third, this is known as the style of American Chemical Society. This is the most common, but in spite of this, many journals follow this type of format. There is another, just see here. Here again, there is a story to tell you about this. Now here, in most journals now, they prefer the title of the paper also. And the title of the paper may be in the running matter, or this is just like this. And I still remember our one paper was accepted by the chief editor in this same journal, Computation and Theoretical Chemistry, and we had not given the titles, and the chief editor, apart from some instructions by the reviewers, chief editor asked us to write title of the paper. And due to oversight, we sent the paper without writing the titles, and the chief editor removed our paper from consideration. So you have to be very careful about following this. I will talk about how to write responses to reviewers' comments. That is also very important. I will tell you later. So this is the format about the journal. Then we come to actual writing of the research paper. The first is title. Now title, as far as possible, title should be eye-catching. It should be eye-catching. Now you have to consider, it creates some sort of interest in the chief editor and in later on in the, in reviewers also. I give you some examples of our own, of course. We had developed a new synthesis of these compounds reacting with 1,2-dialkyl pyridinium salt reacting with phosphorus trichloride. All these compounds were new. Now, instead of giving this reaction of dialkyl pyridinium salt with phosphorus trichloride, or instead of writing the IUPAC name of these compounds, that is synthesis and characterization of these compounds, we preferred to write the name 2-phosphoindolegenes. Why? Because indolegenes are well-known nucleus. And when we correlate our new compounds with this indologene, then naturally many people will be attracted. So that is why we wrote this and we selected this title. I give you one more example. Now, yesterday, Professor Martin also mentioned that if you have reinvestigated some earlier findings and you are adding some new results, then it is better you write this sort of title, reinvestigation, for example, in this case, of homoaromicity of cycloheptamonthrephite-trine. Now we gave this title. Now we had done a lot of experiments and theoretical. Now this is a very interesting topic, that how theoretical calculations can support or can predict experiments. And then I wrote this article for this, giving this title, Synergy between Experimental and Theoretical Results of Some Reactions of Annihilated 1,3-phosphorus. Now this is also interesting, that an unexpected reaction of imidazo 1,2-pyridine with dimethylacetylene dicarboxylate. We have compiled this paper and we are going to submit it soon. So these are some of the examples how your title can be made more attractive. Now then we come to abstract. The second part is abstract, and abstract is very important. Why? Because in the beginning, chief editor will read only the abstract. And when he invites reviewers, only abstract is sent. And therefore, it should be as interesting as possible. Now, many times I find that in the abstract, people start giving introduction of the subject. That is absolutely wrong. You should concentrate only on your findings in this case. So one should avoid giving introduction of the subject. Instead, a brief summary of your own results should be given. Here again, I give an example of our own paper. We have recently compiled a manuscript and submitted, of course, and heterocyclic carbenes, copper-1 complexes as catalysts, a theoretical insight. Now here in the abstract, we have given these electronic structures of n-heterocyclic carbenes, namely these, and their complexes with cuprous halides have been investigated theoretically. This first we have given what we have done, whether theoretical or experimental, and then we started our results. In contrast to other NHCs, imidazolilidine and 1,2-triazolidine do not dimerize. So this is an example, and then we proceed further. It is further supported by their greater thermodynamic and kinetic stability. So in nutshell, we have given our results in the form of a summary. So this is what is expected in the abstract, not more, never introduction. Then the second most important part is introduction. Now in an introduction, I give you an example. Then in the introduction, first in 1 or 2 sentences, you try to correlate the subject with the historical findings. For example, in NHC, the seminal discovery of argon water level in N-heterocyclic carbene in 1991. This is the history of this NHC. Then further development are given here, more intensive research and so on. Then in second part of the introduction itself, then you try to highlight the importance of these compounds. What is the importance? And third is, then you try to point out the gap in the research, because unless you point out the gap in the research, your own findings will not acquire significance. For example, in this case, we are saying that no systematic investigation has been made so far to study effect of the nature of the heteroatoms in the carbene ring. For example, there are only nitrogen atoms, what we have done in this paper, or there is sulfur atom also. The carbene ring on the stability and ligating ability of different NHCs. Now you describe your own work again. DFT-based various reactivity descriptors such as global hardness, eta, global softness, electronic, and so on, these are given. So now in the last, we have done these and our results are presented here. So you have created some sort of interest. What is the importance? What was the research gap? And how you have tried to fill up that research gap. So this is a sample of writing introduction. Now the next is results and discussion. I have often found that here people start giving experimental details. That is, the reaction was carried out in dichloromethane at room temperature, and it was stirred for so many hours, and what was the temperature and so on. All these details should be avoided in results and discussion. Simply you come straight to results. I have rejected many papers only, or rather I have asked to revise this paper that you shift this matter to methodology or experimental details. So I give you examples here, our two examples. Now avoid giving experimental details here. For example, we have recently compiled a research paper to be submitted, reinvestigation. Just see the same title I mentioned earlier, reinvestigation of tandem dimerization and 1,3-alkyl shift in 3-benzyl benzothiazolylidene carbene, formation of 2 stereoisomers. How now in next sentence or next paragraph we will say that Baldwin, a very renowned scientist, had reported this reaction, and they reported only one compound, and we for the first time succeeded in isolating 2 compounds, and this is what we are giving. So just in results, under results and discussion, we give this statement followed by the equation. Now this is 3-benzyl benzothiazolium bromide. This was the title, of course. This is the statement, 3-benzyl benzothiazolium bromide on reacting with triethylamine in dichloromethane under nitrogen atmosphere at room temperature yielded 2 isomeric these compounds. And then scheme 3. Now just after this scheme 3 will come and the structures of the compounds formed are given here. Now, and it is followed by, now naturally, then it will be followed by discussion, how these compounds were characterized, and here also brief discussion. If there are many compounds, just as a representative, you can discuss the structure of only one compound. Avoid giving more details here. The current trend is that most of the journals now prefer that you give your detailed spectral data in supplementary material. And here you give only the relevant points discussion. Now I give you another example or our theoretical papers. I just mentioned earlier this paper. This is the result. To have an insight into the electronic structures and compare thermodynamic stabilities, we optimized geometries and carried out natural bond orbital analysis of the following representative NHCs at this level. Only this. This is the figure. So these are our results. And then it will be followed by discussion. Now here comes the experimental details. Again, I have seen many times that people do not understand that the reactions occur in molar quantities. And therefore, it is absolutely necessary that you mention the molar quantities, actual weight of the reactant, and always it is followed by molar quantity. Whether this is 1:1 reaction or 1:2 reaction, it will be shown here. Secondly, the details should be quite, so that if anybody wants to repeat that experiment, he or she should be able. This is the theory of experimental details, and most of the journals emphasize that you give details in such a manner that anybody can repeat this reaction. I give you an example again. While writing method of preparation, the quantities of the reactants should be expressed in moles also. All the conditions should be given explicitly so that it can be repeated if desired. I give you an example here. Then recently we published this research paper. Generation and trapping of non-aromatic cycloamines via diazotization, de-diazotization of N-aminocyclic amines, theoretical and experimental results. Now I just reproduce the method we gave in experimental section to a solution of N-aminocyclic amine. This is the number in the scheme. No, sorry, 4 millimole. Then name 1 aminopipridine. But we should not end here. After we have given 4 millimole, we should give the weight also in milligrams. Now the recent trend is that you try to take as small quantity of the reactants as possible so that unnecessary pollution is not created. The 400 milligram, and if it is a liquid, then besides this weight, you should give the volume also, 430 microliters. Then since we used 4 these compounds, so here we have given the weights of all these. 4 millimole is common to all, and these are the weights of different volumes. In acetonitrile, 5 milliliter, taken in a 25 milliliter round bottom flask and cooled to this -5 degrees. Was added tertiary butyl nitrite. This gives the sequence of adding the reactants. Again, the philosophy is that if anybody wants to repeat this experiment, he should be able to do this. With continuous stirring. After the addition was complete, stirring was continued for another half an hour, maintaining the temperature and thereafter a solution of DMAD. Now, since we are taking 1:2, now it is clear. 4 millimole here and 8 millimole here, and so on. Now, then after this, how this compound was purified, it should be given. Progress of the reaction was monitored by TLC. It was complete after circa 11 to 16 hours, and the reaction mixture was concentrated and few drops of diethyl ether were added. These are the details. Such details should be given. And finally, if we have purified the compounds by chromatography, then it should be given here. And at the same time, which eluent we have used. It should be given here. Ethyl acetate chloroform, 0.2 into 9.8 volume percentage. This should also be given. So this is about the experimental details. Then last is conclusions. Many journals or most of the journals ask for conclusions, and in some journals they ask for perspective also. So here we should again describe our conclusions, but one should be careful that it should not be similar to the abstract. It should be quite different, and possibly if you can give perspective also. So for example, here uh, in this paper, we gave negative hyperconjugation exists in tricyclosis in this compound. So this is the conclusion of this. Now, as I mentioned, in some journals, they ask conclusions and perspective. I'm just going to finish, Chandni. Don't worry. I'm very punctual. 1 minute. Synthesis of a variety of organophosphorus compounds using 2-phosphoindologenes as precursors. We published recently this Pure and Applied Chemistry. And here we gave future perspectives. This is also important. This makes your work important in the eyes of reviewers, that how this work can be extended further. So several possibilities can be perceived for future and so on. So these are some of the points I tried to highlight, and hopefully it will be useful to you. Thank you once again for your patience. Thank you. If there are any questions, then I can ask.
Thank you so much, sir. I request the delegates to post any questions if they have in the chat box, and we'll take them up after the next session. And thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your enlightening presentation on how we can draft and organize a manuscript in a correct way. And I really hope that the common mistakes that you told us about won't be so common anymore when we are drafting our manuscripts the next time. Thank you so much, sir.
You are welcome.
Now I invite our next speaker, and it is my privilege to introduce Professor Ayan Datta for the next session. He, a professor at the Indian Association for Cultivation of Science, Kolkata. Professor Datta is a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research and a postdoc fellow from the University of North Texas, USA. A proud recipient of the B.M. Birla Science Prize 2017 in Chemical Sciences and a DST SERB Distinguished Investigator Award 2019, Professor Ayan Datta has 180 publications to his credit. Sir is also a member of the editorial board of a number of prestigious journals, such as the Journal of Physical Chemistry, ABC and Letters, Journal of Chemical Sciences, and the Bulletin of Material Science. His talk today on effective scientific manuscript writing will guide us to put our ideas together in an accurate, unambiguous, and concise way. I welcome Professor Datta to grace us with his words. Sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mathur. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you. So, first of all, let me start by thanking Professor Bansal for giving us a bird's eye view of and a very experienced view of how to be a good writer. So it is very difficult to put my foot inside his shoes, but I will try my best to convey my thoughts and also to convey to particularly the young students how to get their results published in the best possible. So can I share my screen? I will try to share my screen.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. It is this is a new normal, and we are supposed to meet over virtual platform, which is, I think, is a positive thing, because otherwise it is such a big difficulty to get everybody together, and it allows students particularly to attend seminars and allows students all across India and even world to attend it. So as a result, I see that there are about 230 participants for it. So, to conduct a meeting with 230 participants in an offline mode would have been a Herculean task. So I am Ayan Datta, and I am from the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. So I will try to make it interactive, and you can even write your questions on the chat box. So yeah, so the first thing is, well, the first question which I have for you is, good afternoon, how are you? And so your answer would be, what would be your typical answer? Fine and not fine, right? Yeah, you will say,
Fine.
yeah, I'm fine, I'm not fine. But as it turns out, somebody asked the same question to a great poet, and this poet's name was Mirza Ghalib. And somebody asked the same question to Ghalib. And what Ghalib says, "Kaise ho?" किसी ने गालिब से पूछा कैसे हो, and then Ghalib replied with a smile, saying in his own very kind of very poetic way, जिंदगी में गम है, गम में दर्द है, दर्द में मजा है और मजे में हम. So the point which I'm trying to tell you is, even a very simple thing, even which is something which seems to be simple, can be put in a very elaborate and a very interesting way. How to do it is like poetry. I mean, not everybody would be a great writer. For that matter, would not be a great writer of science articles as well. But yes, when you have results, it is your duty and it is your sovereign duty to make it as appealing to the broader audience. And Professor Bansal was saying the same thing. Because even though you have done great science, but you have to get at least the editors excited first. Second thing, you have to get the reviewers excited by reading the abstract. Only when the reviewer gets excited by reading the abstract, then only he or she decides to even take up your manuscript for scientific peer review. So you need to make it attractive. Okay. Now, I mean, in fact, extending the logic of Professor Bansal, I would also go ahead. See, now, of course, I mean, 5 years from now, it might not be a scientific editor who is reviewing your manuscript. I mean, the initial screening, but it might be an artificial intelligence or a kind of machine learning algorithm which sorts your manuscript. Things are changing. Things are changing very fast because there are a large number of submissions. So most probably you will have a machine, I mean, a kind of an algorithm which sorts out this manuscript, tries to find out what is interesting in the manuscript, what is new in the manuscript, and based on some of those points, it will be taken further or will be sent back. So again, it is a challenge. 10 years from now, the challenges of publishing manuscript was to do a good science. 20 years from now, good solid science. But now you have to even convince, forget the editors, you have to convince machines. Okay. So you see things are changing. So, and we will see, and to remain competitive and worthwhile, we have to look at these aspects. So I have another thing for you. And what do you see? I mean, this is a little offline because if you do it offline, you get comments. Unfortunately, I don't get comments in this online mode. So I hate it in some sense. So what is your first perception by looking at it? Well, it looks like a tree which has dried up, right? It looks like a tree which has dried up. Not very interesting. In fact, this is what the great mathematician Aryabhatta told when this something similar was shown to Aryabhatta. Aryabhatta was a great mathematician, one of the great scientists. And he says Sushkam Kashtam, which means a tree which does not, or a wood which does not have any, life. But then there was another great man, contemporary period, and his name was Kalidas. And he says, you mean the same thing, right? And he said, Neerasa Taruva. If you listen to the phonetics of that, you feel that the second line is a better description. Both represent the same thing in terms of the fact of the matter. But the fact that, Neerasa Taruvara seems to be a better representation, better phonetic representation than the dried up, even the sound is dried up, called Sushkam Kashtam. So, in your manuscript, you also need to think of how to present things in a more presentable and an attractable fashion. So I thought I will start with this kind of my own thoughts to it. Okay. So I am the and I'm one of the editorial advisory boards of the Journal of Physical Chemistry A, B, and C, and also the Bulletin of Material Science published by the Indian Academy of Science. Okay. So what are the attributes of a high quality research paper? Well, a research paper is a literature. In fact, that's what you see when you go to a library, they say, this is the first question which your guide says, do the literature survey. They don't ask you to go and find out the details. When you say literature, you mean that it is not only a scientific report of some observations, but a detailed analysis, or even to some extent a kind of in-depth understanding of the phenomenon. The second point, and we will come back to some examples. I mean, I think if we give examples, that makes more attractive sense. The first thing is the title and the abstract should be simple and attractive. The figures and the scheme should be well drawn, self-explanatory. And the third thing, now this is something which is going to be very important. If you have noticed it, the world is changing. People are spending less time inside the lab and while they are on the travel. So where are people reading their papers? People are reading their papers on Twitter. People are reading their paper on Facebook. In fact, people are reading their papers on smartphones, not in principle in the lab in front of the computer. So the idea is every figure and every scheme which you make should be of high resolution, but less data sensitive. Because most people would typically read your paper on a smartphone, either inside a metro or while traveling. So make sure your figures open with small data connections. I mean, you don't need to have a figure which is like 5 MB, 10 MB. Make a compact figure, high resolution, but which opens in a small smart device. Because that way you are going to make more inroads into people inside villages, inside people where you don't have good data connections. And the second point is, make sure your figures, particularly your figures and the legends, are well seen on a smartphone. I mean, the screen of a smartphone is much smaller than the screen of a desktop. So make sure on a small screen of a smartphone, your legends and your axis units are seen. And this is something which is important. Even if you publish in a great journal, let us assume you have published it in JSA. But doesn't matter, if your article is not being able to open up, people will not read it. Okay. So make sure that the figures and schemes are in a sense are compliant with the IT technology. I mean, the big IT technology which we are going to have. We are going through this revolution. So I mean, first of all, nobody is now going to the library. Forget it. People are reading the library either in front of their computers or in fact in front of their smartphones. So make sure your figures are not very data sensitive, but yes, very attractive and legible. And this is what Professor Bansal said in wonderfully he presented. Make sure that the experimental, whether it is experimental in the sense whether it is the laboratory, I mean whether the masses or the substances, or whether the theoretical sections are sufficient, do have sufficient details which can be reproduced in another laboratory. The worst thing which you can do for a manuscript is that the person who reads your manuscript wants to reproduce your paper and finds it difficult to reproduce because of lack of details. And then suddenly that person starts to believe that, why this person is not giving all data. So maybe his data is not good. As a result, maybe I will not cite that. So this is something which harms your thing. For example, if you are a computational chemist, the standard rule is please supply all the coordinates of all the molecules, all the systems, whether it is a periodic DFT or something. Make sure all the approximations, all the coordinates are given in the supporting information file. So anybody can reproduce the data, right? And finally, make a compelling and exciting scientific story. People, when people come every day morning, for example, I know, for example, nowadays, every day morning when you wake up, you will have, you can actually feed it in your computer that, or on your mobile that, and then you use a search engine in which you say, these are the areas, for example, I'm a synthetic organic chemistry. I'm interested in natural products. There will be a kind of, again, an artificial intelligence algorithm which will send you related papers. But by reading the papers, you are going to select only the papers where you find they're exciting. So as a result, you are competing with the other people in the crowd. So the point is, how do you make yourself visible in a crowd? I mean, when I say yourself, I mean your articles, your science, right? In other words, how do you be hatke in a group? right? So this is something which is which should be worthwhile to think about. Present an exciting scientific story. Make a good story. Make somebody who loves to read it, right? And that's what I'm saying. Tell a story. And then, you don't need to start with saying that once upon a time there was like this. Well, but make sure that the context of your paper is evident. Why do you think that this paper is written? Why is it not just n+1? Why this paper is going to be important in that field? What important message you want to give to the audience? Make sure that the paper has enough punchlines. I don't want to say it, but yeah, I mean, you don't need to have item numbers in your papers, but the idea is, well, you make sure that your paper does have the punchline. I mean, I don't find anything wrong in that. If Bollywood uses item numbers, why don't you make your figures and the results worthwhile? Okay. And for God's sake, avoid dumping data. I mean, your data, most of the data, the important data be in the manuscript, but otherwise, other things, put it in the supporting information file. And remember, supporting information file is extremely important because that gives you the idea. For example, if your paper is 3 pages, your supporting information file might be 30 pages, 40 pages. And the good thing is nobody is going to ask page charges from you. So give as much details as you want. Okay, there is another reason why I say that you should give supporting information. See, now, of course, you are also going to have, I mean, we can even have a long debate on this, on what side of the thing you are. There are things like they're called self-plagiarism. For example, in the experimental section, or if you're a computational chemist, you can hardly change the things which you are doing. Typically, the experimental section of many of the things are similar. So the question is, instead of writing them same every time in a different manuscript, which unnecessarily adds up to your percentage of your plagiarism check, please transfer it to the supporting information and only keep the relevant part in the main manuscript. So that also saves you of the plagiarism issues. In fact, this is also one of the issues which many of the Indian students have to face, because in our schools, unfortunately, we teach that the guy or the girl who gets the maximum marks is the person who completely memorizes what is written in the textbook. So only if you memorize it and reproduce it completely from the textbook, you get full marks. Unfortunately, that is not the right thing. You have to think in your own words and write it in your own ways. So as a result, plagiarism, the fact that plagiarism is not a good idea, that feeling takes some time to percolate. So, even if you are writing something very obvious, try to write it in your own words. That will help you expand your vocabulary. The other thing which people, of course, make a mistake, people think that if I cite other important papers, what will happen to my work? My work will appear to be smaller. So people skip the other important literature. People want to present that, my work is the greatest work of the universe. That is not the point, because your paper is going to be reviewed by at least 2 to 3 anonymous reviewers who are going to find faults here. They will find that that person has not cited a very important literature. And unluckily, and if you are unlucky, and most probably you would be, because the paper will go to somebody who is more relevant or who is an expert in the field. And if you don't cite that person would be mildly annoyed. So make sure, be liberal, cite people. By the way, don't unnecessarily cite people. By the way, people have an habit. Whoever has got a Nobel laureate, whoever is a Nobel laureate, you cite that paper. That is not the right thing to do. Cite the relevant scientists and the relevant papers which is related to your manuscript, your work. Please, that is very important. Don't cite some Nobel laureate's work, some Nobel laureate's paper unnecessarily. The other very important thing is, see, and I see there are students here who are going to be the reviewers for your manuscript. How does the editor choose the reviewer? The editor chooses the reviewer by looking at the papers which you have cited. Now, if you cite Nobel laureates, You might think my paper will go to a Nobel laureate and then my Nobel laureate will be a great man. Maybe he would be a great man, but he would be far too busy. He or she would be far too busy. So 99.99% that person would never have enough time to review your manuscript. So make sure that you give a balanced citation for your manuscript. Please do explain in the introduction why you did that work, right? The other thing is, of course, make sure that your data is, don't hide data, don't manipulate data, and then give the data accurately and objectively. Exactly what is required, and then make good, strong conclusions. But again, then people again mistake. Provide strong conclusions and how you're important, how your work is important in the field, but don't make too tall claims. Then people will think, okay, that person is just lying. Don't do that. Make reasonable conclusions. Be realistic. Be on the world. And this is, I tell it to particularly the young people who are going to write their first paper of their life. And this is something which was told to me by, scientists when we were growing up. See, the slope of 0 to 1 is infinity. So when you write your first paper in your life, that is very big. But when you write from 200 paper to 201%, you make only a change of 0.004%. So the idea is, so the first paper which you will write would be a kind of an experience for you. And make sure you do that, but don't make tall claims. Be grounded, be modest, but not be unnecessarily modest. Don't underestimate yourself, and don't be too boastful. We'll see. We'll see how we go ahead. Okay. And so what would be the anatomy of your manuscript? Well, the title, abstract, right? Introduction, graphics, experimental section, results and discussions or conclusions, references, and acknowledgements. Okay. In fact, Professor Bansal nicely gave some bullet-wise the points which are important. So I thought I will add up. One thing which I thought I will add up, which again the Indian, particularly the Indian students do make a mistake. Whom to acknowledge? How do we choose whom to acknowledge? Do I acknowledge my telephone operator, who of course connects me to my guide? No. Do I acknowledge my mother for giving birth to me? No. Do I acknowledge my father for paying my tuition fee for a manuscript that I am writing? No. Please acknowledge those people who are directly affected and positively affected you in writing that manuscript. Acknowledgement is not a place, is not a place where you think of thanking your friends and family. No. First, acknowledge your funding agencies. If you have got some funding, private or public, acknowledge the funding agency of the students, because students may have CSIR or Inspire or some other fellowships, and acknowledge scientists with whom you might have discussed. Right? It's very important. In fact, there is a very recent article in this issue of Science, because this is something the world is churning. The educational world is churning. In fact, this issue of Science has an article which says, please be kind when you give authorships to your co-workers. In fact, this is an article which is in this issue of Science. And what they say that even if an undergraduate has worked in your lab for a few times, consider giving authorship to that person. This is a way in which people are thinking, because when you, if not, at least acknowledge that undergraduate who has spent 2 months or a summer project inside your lab, because that might motivate that person to take up a career in science. So the world is changing, but please make sure you acknowledge people who are only related with your work. Okay. It seems, scientific manuscript writing need not be told only by scientists. In fact, there is a gentleman and whose name is Ranchor Das Chamal Das Kanchar, and it seems people call him Rancho. He has some good suggestions how to write a manuscript. So we'll see what suggestions he is giving.
What is a machine? What is a machine?
Actually, sir, बचपन से चाहता था कि
What is a machine?
Is my screen visible?
आप मुस्कुरा क्यों रहे?
Rather, is Amir Khan visible?
एक्चुअली सर चाहता था कि कॉलेज में पढ़ूं. आज यहाँ बैठा हूँ, बहुत मजा आ रहा है सर.
ज्यादा मजा लेने की जरूरत नहीं है. बोलो, मशीन का डेफिनेशन बोलो.
Sir, a machine is anything that reduces human effort, sir.
Will you please elaborate?
सर, हर वो चीज जो इंसान का काम आसान करे या वक्त बचाए, वो मशीन है सर. गर्मी लग रही है, बटन दबाया, हवा चालू, फैन, मशीन है सर. मीलों दूर आप अपने दोस्त के साथ बात कर सकते हैं, टेलीफोन, मशीन है सर. करोड़ों का हिसाब चुटकी में करता है, कैलकुलेटर, मशीन है सर. सर, एक्चुअली हम मशीनों से घिरे हुए हैं सर. पेन की निब से लेके पैंट की जिप तक सब मशीन है सर. एक सेकंड में अप, एक सेकंड में डाउन, अप डाउन, अप डाउन, अप डाउन.
डेफिनेशन क्या है?
सर, वही तो बता रहा हूँ सर.
एग्जाम में यही सब लिखोगे? ये मशीन है, अप डाउन अप डाउन. इडियट. एनीबॉडी एल्स? यस.
Sir, machines are any combination of bodies so connected that their relative motions are constrained, and by which means force and motion may be transmitted and modified as a screw in its nut, or a lever arranged to turn about a fulcrum, or a pulley about its pivot, etc. Especially a construction more or less complex, consisting of a combination of moving parts or simple mechanical elements as wheels, levers, cams, etc.
क्या बात? Perfect. Please sit down.
Thank you. Thank you.
लेकिन सर, मैंने भी तो वही बताया सर, आसान भाषा में.
आपको अगर सिंपल भाषा पसंद हो तो आर्ट्स एंड कॉमर्स कॉलेज ज्वाइन कीजिए.
लेकिन सर, मतलब भी तो समझ में आना चाहिए. ऐसे किताबी डेफिनेशन रट के क्या फायदा?
आप किताब से ज्यादा जानते हैं. किताब में यही डेफिनेशन है, और अगर आपको पास होना हो तो आप यही लिखेंगे.
लेकिन सर, और भी तो किताबें हैं जिसमें भाई
आसान भाषा में भर जाइए. So we were discussing about the machine. अरे, तुम वापस क्यों आए हो?
सर, कुछ भूल गया हूं सर.
क्या?
Instruments that record, analyze, summarize, organize, debate, and explain information that are illustrative, non-illustrative, hardbound, paperback, jacketed, non-jacketed, with forward introduction, table of contents, index that are intended for the enlightenment, understanding, enrichment, enhancement, and education of human brain through sensory root of vision, sometimes touch.
अरे, कहना क्या चाहते हो?
किताबें सर, बुक्स भूल गया हूं सर, ले लो.
तो सीधा सीधा नहीं कह सकते थे?
थोड़ी देर पहले कोशिश की थी सर, लेकिन आपको सीधा सीधा पसंद नहीं आया.
Okay. So So the idea is to make something. I mean, am I audible again?
Yes, sir, you are.
So the idea is to make something. I mean, particularly this is true with the title of the manuscript. Make sure that this is easily understandable. Particularly when somebody is reading your manuscript, don't make it overly scientifically. I mean, even if it is scientifically correct, and I give you an example. Anybody knows what is this? Helianthus sanus. Anybody? Anybody can take a guess? Would write it over a chat box. What does it mean? Well, what it means is only a sunflower. Well, what I wrote was a scientific name of a sunflower. But the question is, so for example, of course, you are going to write the scientific name of your compound in the manuscript, of course, but don't write it on the title, because then nobody would understand that you have done some research on, say, sunflower. Make sure you write things in a concise and readable fashion. So, it's very difficult to come up with a rule of thumb, but typically the title of your manuscript should be less than 15 words. 15 words is even a big number. Try to write it in a concise way, but make sure your points are understood. More than 15 words, people would lose interest, right? How much, by the way, this is also correlated with something with the young generation is correlated with. How much is the upper limit of the number of words you can write it on a Twitter? About the same number, 15 words, maximum, 12 to 15 words. And of course, people have done a very extensive research in computer science to find out that how much is the retention ability of a human mind towards the reading one full sentence. And people have found out that more than 12 to 15 words, people find it difficult to correlate. So there is a, I mean, you have to correlate with the psychology of the reader. Okay, is that clear? The other very important thing, which of course I as an editor and of course as an author come up, my students come up and say, sir, I want to send my papers to JAX. JAX has a very high impact factor. I want to publish articles in a high impact journal. And the answer to it, impact factor should not decide your journal. Should not decide the place where you would publish your work. Never. Impact factor is for the journals to do business. Your job is to present your scientific work to the audience. Period. So, if you are working on, say, organic synthesis, your right audience would be Journal of Organic Chemistry. If you are working on catalysis, try one of the catalysis journals. If you are a physical chemist, try Journal of Physical Chemistry, depending on the area, ABC or whatever. Of course, if your work has a kind of a much bigger audience or fundamentally important, you should try JAX. But make sure that you submit your articles to the where you will find readership. If you have found out a crystal structure of a new organic molecule, send it to Crystal Growth and Design. Submit it to a crystallography journal rather than a biochemistry journal, just because a biochemistry journal might have a higher impact factor than a crystallography journal. Because, I mean, even if the biochemistry journal publishes your crystal, nobody will read it. Because people who are reading your journal, I mean, reading your article, are in a community. And because remember, peer review works only in the community. So make sure your article caters to the audience where you want to write your paper. For example, if you're an organometallic compound, I mean, organometallic chemist, try to publish it in Organometallics or Journal of Organometallic Chemistry. Try to find out where your paper, where the peer of your paper, where the readers of your paper lie. Who are your right audience? Find it out. And then only submit. Don't go by impact factor. Because first of all, impact factor is not a constant. Impact factors have fallen over a time. There were journals like which had impact factor of 10. Now they have impact factor of 3. Because people have found out they were hyped and then suddenly those fields have got saturated and now nobody reads it. So please don't go by hype. And this I'm particularly telling it to the students. You would be judged by the work you have done and by the people who are working in that community. So if an expert in your community finds your work good, you would be appreciated. When you would apply for a postdoc, the guy who the postdoc advisor, or when somebody will appoint you as an academic job or a kind of an industry job, people will not say what is your total impact factor, what is the number of citations. People will see what is your contribution in the field. So don't go by this impact factor race. Impact factor race is good. Watch it from far away. Don't be a part of that. That is what the various journals, RSC, ACS, Wiley to fight. Because that is their business. Don't be a part of their business. Be scholars. And when you submit your article, do check what is the scope of the journal. For example, there are journals like which work on interfaces. If your work is more on at the interfaces of bio, nano, maybe one of those ACS journals. Plus, please read what is the area which this journal covers to. Because most likely this paper, I mean, if you submit a wrong paper to a different journal, the paper will not be accepted, and in all likelihood, and then you will waste time by submitting articles and then changing the format and so on and so forth. Because most of the time, many of the journals have different formats. You have to change the referencing style, and that will take time. In fact, one of the good rules of thumb is by the end of the writing the paper, you would already get an idea where this journal fits in. If you have done the work, if you have written the paper, followed the literature, by the end of writing the paper, you would always get an idea where this article will go. You will feel and use that. Okay. So how do you, I mean, by the way, there are some good references. For example, the Journal of Physical Chemistry letters in 2013 actually gave you a nice rules of thumb how to compose a good scientific manuscript. So please read some of these citations, and if required, I will send the slides to Mrs. Gupta, Rakhi Gupta ji. I will send her to this. If required, you can discuss, because there are a lot of citations. In fact, journals are also training people how to write journals. For example, these are key. For example, these key steps in composing a good scientifically effective manuscript. How many figures you should have for a paper? Fundamental question. Well, that depends on whether it's a communication or a figure. But typically, don't give 10, 20 figures in the manuscript. It does not look right. Merge the figures, make them A, B, C, D. Don't give every result as a figure. Compose, collate them. In a single panel, make A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but make sure each of those panels are seen. Spend time. And of course, create a useful outline. Gather the data, make sure, and ask the question why, what, how, when. It is important. And the other important thing, and also that's the point, think of how many number of figures should be there in the manuscript. The other thing which this is something which I wanted to point out, I will come to it. Do discuss with your colleagues, with your peers. Send them the paper, get a feedback, quick feedback. And this is what people do. You have written a paper, you ask your friends to read that paper, give a feedback, and take those feedback positively. Try to get the feedback of a even a person who is not a scientist. Just ask him to read, him or her to read. What is the feedback which you get? And finally, I would like to, this is a very important point. Start to work on the outlines of the project and don't wait till the end of the result. There are people whom I know never could write a great paper because they wanted every paper to be in Nature. I know a lot of professors who wanted to be very famous, who wanted to publish only in Nature and Science. And as a result, they could not publish anything in their life. Don't be like this. Be fair to your students, give credit to people, and write in proper peer-reviewed journal. You will not become very famous by publishing in Nature. By the way, you should know this. The maximum number of retracted papers ever by any journal is by Nature and Science. So if you have read a paper in Nature and Science, it is a high possibility that somebody will say that these results are wrong. Because these are so high impactful journals. So anything new they would publish without counter verifying. So the number of retractions in Nature and Science is far, far more than, say, Journal of Organic Chemistry, Journal of JACS, or say Journal of Physical Chemistry. So not necessarily if you publish in JACS, in Nature or Science, your science is good. And if you publish in your area, say organometallics or Journal of Organic Metallics, that field is bad. Okay. What is in a name? How do you name your manuscript? And there is a kind of, for example, typically now people have come up with words. Don't use things like effectiveness, first time. Also, the thing is, don't ask questions in the title. Avoid asking questions in the title, and clearly tell what you have accomplished. Okay. And then don't say first time, original, convenient, effective synthesis. Don't use that word. In fact, now the ACS does not allow these words to be used. Convenient, efficient, elegant, facile, first, novel, practical, simple, unique, unprecedented, versatile. Let other people tell about you. You should advertise your work, but don't advertise in that way. There is a reason why it is so. When you write these words, people start expecting undue things from that manuscript. If you write, say, elegant, people will say, immediately the first question which the reviewer will ask you, I did not find anything elegant, but as the author has written in the title. So don't unnecessarily increase and hype in your manuscript, which does not get translated across the manuscript. So this is something which I thought. In fact, ACS has a nice guideline how to not to give a title. Okay, that's what the point I was saying. Please don't use adjectives which seem to be too self-promoting. Don't be seen as too aggressive or too pushy. Because then you remember your paper is being reviewed by 2 to 3 unknown reviewers. And people don't want, authors to have too much attitude. Does not look good. Be simple, be docile. You will have much higher chance of getting this article published. And the point is, and in fact, this is some examples which I thought I will give you. In fact, the Chemistry of Materials and Journal of Physical Chemistry letters have this nice things of what are the titles, how to choose your titles. For example, look at this title. By the time you come to something like this, you will lose interest in reading it. For example, a very wrong title will be Synthesis, Electrochemistry, Spectroscopic Characterization, and X-ray crystal structure of nickel-3 complexes that can be isolated and promote carbon-carbon bond forming reductive elimination. That is one of the worst titles which you can ever think of. Be smart, condense it, and make a title like this: Carbon-carbon bond forming reductive elimination from isolated nickel-3 complexes. Very concise and simple. Okay. Again, another title: Synthesis, Electrochemistry, Spectroscopic Characterization, and X-ray crystal structure of a novel NAC-LA complex. How will anybody know what is NAC-LA complex other than the people in the field? That attacks DNA and cures cancer. Please don't write all these things in the title. In fact, this is something, maybe Professor Bansal would also make a comment. This is something very, obnoxiously wrong happening. Now people are saying that whatever they are doing will cure COVID in scientific articles. Please don't do that. You are unnecessarily creating hype, and then people will lose faith on you and us as scientists. It is our job in the society to be free and fair. People respect us for our job. Don't, in your manuscript, people are writing all sorts of manuscripts with title that this will cure COVID. No need to unnecessarily hype. Okay. For example, look at this title. Much better. Lanthanum 3 diketinoamate complex cleaves DNA at nanomolar concentration. Much better title. The other thing is, avoid jargons, symbols, formula, abbreviations in the title. That will put off people. Yeah. In fact, ACS says less than 20 words. But that was in Chemistry of Materials. That was in Chemistry of Materials in 2014. But now people have even less patience after 6 years. So I would recommend you use less than even 15 words for your title. Make sure that the number of words which Twitter allows, there should be even less. There is a good reason why Twitter allows this number of words. Make sure of the technology, how the words are. And so how do you choose? You are writing your first manuscript of your life, and you will not write the best manuscript title when you are writing the first paper. So the idea thing is, write 3-4 titles, show it to your friends, colleagues, get your opinions, do a simple vote, take them for a chai, and then show that I am writing like this. Can you give some feedback? Get feedback from people, and whatever they like, use it. Okay. Now this is something which is extremely neglected. The table of contents. People say table of contents mein kya hai? But of course, table of contents is very important because that is the first glimpse of your manuscript. The first time somebody reads your paper is that table of contents. In fact, a common mistake which people make, people actually copy paste a figure from the manuscript and put it in the table of contents. That is the worst thing you can do, because your figure of the manuscript is a detail. And when somebody is looking at your TOC, You want the whole story to be coming up in one thing. I mean, unfortunately, I forgot to put it. How many of you have shown how many of you have seen the poster of the greatest Hindi movie, Sholay? Please do see that. It should be available somewhere in the net. The poster which was written by Ramesh Sippy. One poster, one figure which tells you the story, which made it the greatest hit of all times of Bollywood. Make sure one attractive creative design. And the good thing about this table of contents is the companies don't take money for that. You can use as much color as you want. So make sure, be creative, make a good table of content because that attracts people. Look at it. I show you two examples. On the right side is a very bad table of content because this is too much cartoonish. Use of cartoon is not bad, but don't use too much cartoons because it will lose your all scientific value. Look at this. This looks wonderful because it tells you, it shows the image, it also gives you details. Excessive use of cartoons is not good. Similarly, excessive use of color is also not good. Try to use colors which are decent and which gives you a good idea. In fact, both of them have taken from two different manuscripts. But looking at this, I know that this is a good table of content, this is a bad table of content. Make something which is attractive, but not very cheap. People should not feel that this work is become cheap. In fact, a lot of table of contents look very cheap. Be simple, be liberal on color, but don't use colors so that they become obscene. You need to balance. Okay, look at this table of contents from ACS Nano. This is one of the wonderful table of contents, which almost shows the whole manuscript. For example, this is the title, water soluble super paramagnetic magnetite nanoparticles with biocompatible coating for enhanced magnetic MRIs. Okay, look at this. Very clear images. By the way, this is also something important. Table of contents, the quality of the images has to be good. Otherwise, they will not open. They will get blurred. The pixels will get cut when you open it on a big screen. Make sure there is a story and there is a theme. The message is very clear. So I give you a few more examples. All of you know what is this. Yeah, I don't need to tell you this. Right? This is a wonderful table of contents, right? As a theoretical example. And this is Taj Mahal. Anybody knows what is this? Guess. Over chat box, somebody would like to comment. The first one everybody knows is Taj Mahal. Anybody knows the second one? There is a good reason why anybody does not know. And the reason is this is not well made. See, by the way, both are probably made of the same reason. One of them, of course, Shah Jahan wanted his beloved wife to be remembered for generations so that his love remains. And then he was remarkably successful. Everybody now knows his wife's name. This was Mumtaz Mahal. Right? And he was remarkable in that people after 500 years are still talking about it. Because he made something which was attractive. Now, what is shown in the bottom is what is called, well, I never knew that is something like this, but I once went to that place, so I know this is in a place called Aurangabad, and this is what is called the Bibi Ka Maqbara, which probably Aurangzeb made in the remembrance of his mother or wife, I don't know. Of course, the reason why I don't know is because this is not remarkable. This is very shoddily made, even at that time. This is not symmetric, and this is a very cheap replica of Taj Mahal. So the question is, it defeats the purpose. The reason why both were made, that both wanted their beloved, whether mother or wife, to be remembered for the next generation. The first one, the top one, was remarkably successful, and the second one was remarkably unsuccessful. And the difference between the two is the amount of craftsmanship or the amounts of effort which the person has given to that. That was the point which I'm trying to make. So if you make a table of content like the bottom one, nobody will go and read that one because like none of us know what was the BV or what was the mother of Aurangzeb, what's the name of the mother of Aurangzeb. But all of us know what is the name of the wife of Shah Jahan. Because he made something which was worthwhile. People remember this. So I will take maybe 2 to 3 minutes with your permission. How much more
Sure,
time I
sir.
have?
Sure, sir. You can take your time.
Yes, sir, you can take. Perfectly okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but we would like to have more interactions because I would also like to get views, particularly from the young people. And yeah. So look at this. This is another wonderful table of contents. Clear? What is that they have made? They have made something kind of, they have made a cadmium sulfide, cadmium selenide nanoparticles under light. That is what they have given a flash lamp. Very clear. Don't use unnecessary cartoons. That will not make sense. That will look very cheap. And there is a good reason why I suggest you not to give cartoons. There are people, for example, in your social media, all across your print media, there are professional cartoonists, the cartoons which you see all around. We are scientists. So our expertise is not to make cartoons. So most probably you are using a cartoon which is somewhere else from the website. So, I mean, we will not be able to compete in terms of the data with them. So so please use your own expertise to make a good use. Another wonderful table of contents. Very clear. It also gives the details and also very clear. So if you look at the title, this says that investigation of changes in the surface structure. So, the surface structures are nicely shown in different kinds of things. And then how much they change with respect and their characterization using this. Very clear. Now you tell me, look at these 4 TOCs. By the way, all the 4 TOCs have been accepted in various papers. They are all published. But they are very poor TOCs. A, B, C, D. Can anybody tell me why these TOCs are very bad? The first one is not clearly seen. I mean, the font, the blue font with that writing is not clear. The second one is a kind of a IR spectrum, and IR spectrum with these details hardly matters. It is too much details. Don't give too much details. C is just a color blob. Nothing, no science is there. And D is not readable, far too small. Nobody will read it. Finally, you might argue that, sir, I did everything. I spent a lot of time. I made a nice table of contents. I did whatever was good for me. I wrote the manuscript well. Everything was, but still my paper got rejected. Reviewers did not find my paper nice, or maybe the editors did not find the paper exciting, and my paper was rejected. What should I do? I have given so much of time and effort and so much to the things, but still, so what should I do? And my answer to it is yes, there is always another journal, maybe a little impact factor less, maybe not your first preference, but yes, you should publish that work. Because, and I give you 2 examples. I mean, this example, the first example is of a very famous, there is a gentleman called Pyrils who discovered what is called the Pyrils distortion in one-dimensional chains, which says that why you cannot have one-dimensional metal. So Pyril never thought that work was publishable. So he never published it. And then he never published it, and he just wrote it somewhere in a textbook. Had he known that it was such an important discovery, he should have published it. And of course, people got Nobel Prizes later using that idea. So do publish your work, and it will be noted in the community. And if your work is good, and if it is published even on a little less impact factor journal, do send your paper to the important peers in the field. Do email them. People would love to read your work. Be aggressive in promoting your own published work because it is your own creation. So what, other people don't find that work exciting in terms of the impact factor, but do send it to the important people in India and abroad. Ask them to read your work, and people will find that your craftsmanship, your hard work, certainly the scientists will appreciate your work, right? So I think that is the message which I had. And well, whatever is the problem, all is well. Don't feel bad. In fact, the other thing is, I mean, in my own career, whatever small is it, I mean, the papers which are most cited are the papers. I mean, some of the my own most cited papers are rejected from JSA. So my papers in Journal of Physical Chemistry having citation of 250, 300 were rejected from JSAs after review. So the neither the editor nor the reviewers found the articles worth publishing. And again, I give you the same data. I have published papers in JSAs which do not have even 1/5 of that citation. So clearly, if you publish in a great impact factor journal, it's not that your work is well noticed, or if you publish in a lower impact journal, it's not that your work is not noticed. They are not related. If your work is found, you should publish and let other people know. So don't lose heart. And I will leave with this small message and this wonderful song. And then, and by the time you can think of the question which you can.
अंधेरी रात में दिल को न बेकरार कर सुबह जरूर आएगी सुबह का इंतजार कर गम की अंधेरी रात में दर्द है सारी जिंदगी जिसका कोई सिला नहीं दिल को फरेब दीजिए और ये हौसला नहीं और ये हौसला नहीं मुझसे तो बदगुमान हो खुद पे तो एतबार कर सुबह जरूर आएगी सुबह का इंतजार कर गम की अंधेरी रात में
So I will stop here. Thank you. And I would be very happy to have questions.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very, your compelling insights and thoughts, they were very well presented, and the chat box is flooded with compliments.
No, but I do see by one gentleman who actually, Dr. Samreen Faruqi, she was right. She knew that it is called Bibi Ka Maqbara. She knew.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I
people
never
on
knew.
YouTube have also answered, sir.
Aurangabad, and there I found it. Yeah. So you see, you have
Yes,
people who know things.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So question.
Yes, sir. We have one question from Dr. Manjinder Kaur, and she's asking, what should one keep in mind while citing research in the introduction part of a manuscript, and how critical this point is?
Okay, this is a very good question. In fact, there are two reasons why your citation needs to be proper. The rule is don't give 25, 30 citations in the introduction. Typically, people do, first of all, don't unnecessarily cite people, but again, don't be too miser in citation. Cite the relevant important papers. And if they are by the same group, cite them as a club, A, B, C, D. So reference A, you club them as reference 8A, 8B, 8C, 8B. If they are of the same type of work. If the field is very much developed, for example, if you are writing a paper on CH bond activation, this is such a well-known field. There might be several books. And then they said, so the idea is, in that case, club them as organometallic CH bond activations. metal-free CH pi activation, CH bond activation, and club them and give their important references. But make sure that you do cite important contemporary references. Why? Because that is what also tells you that the paper is relevant. Second, the editor is going to choose reviewers from that list. Is that clear? Cite contemporary researchers, contemporary articles. Don't cite an article which a Nobel laureate has written 30 years back.
Okay, sir. And then there is another question from Sunita Budihal. She's asking, should we write the manuscript first and then search the journal, or the other way around? Please suggest.
No. So this is a very deep, again, this is also person specific. See, the idea is once you start writing the manuscript, once you start writing the references, by the time you come to the end of the manuscript, you will also feel that where my manuscript stands in that audience, in that field. In other words, मेरे manuscript का वजन कितना है इस community में? By the time you have finished the manuscript, and then you take an informed decision.
All right, sir. Thank you.
I mean, there are no easy answers to it. There are no easy answers to it. These are, you need to, these are specific questions.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Now I hand over the mic, the virtual mic to Dr. Pragya Sinha to take over for the next technical session. Pragya, ma'am.
Sir, just one question I got to Gupta. Pragya, just a minute. Just one question. So, what is your take on the UGC mandate of publishing in the care listed journals? Because besides the Scopus enlisted and other index journals, it has also, it has its own list wherein they promote publishing. So, what is your take on that and your comments on that?
Okay,
Rakhi, we are again behind time. Don't delay this unnecessary.
Okay, sir. So, the last question, I think.
I think it is not necessary. You can ask personally. We should proceed further.
All right, sir. I'll do that, sir. I'll do that later, maybe. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I answer. It was a wonderful, very informative and wonderful lecture, sir.
Because there is another very important speaker and we should not keep him waiting.
Namaskar. After the wonderful and interesting lecture by Professor R.K. Bansal and Professor Ayan Gupta, now we will start with our second technical session, having two distinguished speakers amongst us. The first esteemed speaker of this session is Professor Masaki Yoshifuji from Japan. Professor Yoshifuji is Emeritus Professor at the Tohoku University, Japan. He is also an Alexander von Humboldt Research Awardee, which is awarded only to a few top scientists. He is also a recipient of International Abruzov's Prize in 2005. He has been on the editorial board of the journals Heteroatom Chemistry and Phosphorus, Sulfur, Silicon, and the Related Elements since 2001. He is also an international scientific board member of International Conference on Phosphorus Chemistry since 1989. He is the former editor of Bulletin of Chemical Society, Japan, and he is also the chairman of the 15th International Conference on Phosphorus Chemistry, Sendai, July 29 to August 3, 2001. His academic society memberships include the Chemical Society of Japan, the American Chemical Society, the Royal Society of Chemistry, the Society of Synthetic Organic Chemistry, amongst others. His area of research include low coordination organophosphorus compounds, unusual organic compounds containing heavier main group elements, small ring or highly strained organic compounds, new organic compounds as conductors or magnets, hydrogen storage, and phosphorus containing exotic compounds. Now I would like to hand over to Professor Yoshifuji for his enlightening lecture. Sir.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to have the opportunity to participate in the workshop Science Writing. This afternoon, I'll talk about the editor's perspective about a research paper. Professor Rod Bansal and Datta have already given a good and instructive talks. I might try to add something to them. Before I go into the main topics, I would like to introduce myself as a chemist. I have been working in the field of heteroatom chemistry, and I'm very much interested in sterically protected unusual phosphorus compounds, as shown here. This type of compounds are those having a double bond involving heavier main group elements had long been believed never to exist as a stable compounds. However, using a bulky organic group such as this one, we were successful in isolation and characterization of this particular compounds as a very stable species. This structure was characterized by the X-ray analysis showing the bond length between two phosphorus atoms is about 10% shorter than the regular single bond.
Professor Yoshifuji, we are not able to see your this slides. You please click share slide. Share screen. Share screen.
Screen?
Yeah, share screen. प्रज्ञा जी बताइए उनको.
Sir, there is an option for share screen.
Green one.
So, green one. So you can open your slide first, presentation, and then share a screen. It will be visible.
You can't see my
So the presentation is not visible. The PowerPoint is not visible.
Oh, yes. Sorry about it.
Yeah.
You first open your PowerPoint, then you click share screen. Otherwise, you give control to Pragya. Pragya ji, आप control ले लीजिए उनसे.
Professor Masaki, there is a bar at the bottom which says security participants chat share screen. So when you click on share screen,
okay,
can you see that?
Just a moment, yes.
So when you
green one.
Share.
Yeah, share screen.
So when you click on that,
yes,
it will prompt you to your PPT or whatever. Yeah. Yes, now it is okay.
Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
Yeah, now it's fine. Good, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem, sir. No issues. Yeah.
Okay. This is my title, and this is what we have been interested in, this type of compounds. And this is an X-ray for that particular compounds. Okay, and we published these new results in Journal of American Chemical Society about 40 years ago. And the paper had been getting a fairly good number of citations, up to 770. So much for my chemistry. I have been on the editorial board for several scientific journals as listed so far. These two are the journals of the Chemical Society of Japan. This one is a scientific report from the Tohoku University, where I acted as an editor-in-chief. I'm always concerned about authors while acting as an editor or reviewer, and in that sense, this talk might be helpful for all who are interested in publishing process of a research paper, I believe. This slide shows a flowchart of research publication process. If you submit a paper to a journal, the editor or editor-in-chief first checks if the article is suitable for publication based on the journal's aims and scope, which are open public. Sometimes the regional editors carries out this task, and next the editor goes to the reviewing steps, which is the most important process and is known as a peer review. But note that the editor could refuse to receive it without passing the peer review if the paper is extraordinarily terrible beyond the journal's standard, although this dictatorship by the editor only should be carefully done or even avoided. The reviewers normally, I'm sorry, there are several reviewing systems such as single blind, a double blind, open system, and so on, mostly depending on the fields of science. These days, most chemistry journals adopt single blind systems where the authors do not know who the reviewers are, whereas the reviewers know the identity of the authors here. On the other hand, in the double blind system, the reviewers also do not know who the authors are, and it is sometimes used in the medical and bio-related sciences. In some journals, the authors can choose either single or double on submission. Open system is just the opposite, where the authors and the reviewers know each other. This open system might increase in numbers in the future. Comparing these systems, however, the single blind review is good enough for judging a regular chemistry paper, in my opinion. The reviewers, normally 2 or 3, reply to the editor with the answer on the suitability for publication. If the reviewers say yes, the paper will be published. However, in most cases, the editor asks the authors to revise the paper according to the comments from them. After author's revision, the revised manuscript is sent to the reviewers again. If the editor decides that the revision is suitable or reasonable, the paper goes to the next step for publication. I will mention about it later again. If the editor gets dominant replies with no from the reviewers, the paper will be returned to the authors by the name of an editor. As I mentioned before, aims and scopes are open public. You can find them on the homepage of the journal on the net. They depend on the types of papers. The fields and methodologies are selling points to the journal. Sometimes publishing body might matter if the journal is published from the academic society or commercial publishers. Occasionally, journal publishers ask the authors for page charge upon publication. So before submission, you should keep in your mind the suitability of the paper with the journal. Recently, journal impact factor, which is said to indicate the quality of the journal, is popular to rank the journals so that the editors are concerned about this evaluation in general. Of course, every editor wishes to make the journals better, to collect good papers, and to get many readers. The slide shows the structure of a regular paper, which consists of titles, abstracts, and so on. I'll discuss some of them later in more details. First of all, letters to the editor or cover letter is important to state how the paper merits publication in the journal. In such a letter, you should stress on the importance, originality, and suitability of your paper to the journal. The title must be attractive, concise, and informative as well. Now, what is a good paper for the science community? In another word, what is a preferable paper for all? IPAC, International Union Pure and Applied Chemistry, organizes the nomenclature system of not only organic compounds, inorganic compounds, and polymers, but also units, symbols, and chemical terminology. These rules are important, and you had better follow the international standards for exchanging ideas, concepts, and so on. As for naming, CAS naming, a chemical abstract service governed by the American Chemical Society, is also convenient to users. Common names or trivial names cannot be ruled out, of course. But throughout the paper, nomenclature and units must be consistent. Formality is important for all. In preparation of scientific papers, reference citation is also essential. Each journal has a different citation style and it changes time to time. For example, as shown here, order of authors, author names, journal abbreviation, volumes, and starting page, or without ending page. And with or without article title as well. If you organize references on a PC program like EndNote, it is easy to get data output in a customized form. And books, patents, meeting papers, and so on has its own citing style for them. Tables are convenient strategies to display the complicated findings to the readers clearly and systematically. Each journal has its own format for listing tables, such as font lines, 2 columns, 1 page, and so on. it is easy to know how to tabulate your idea or your data if you take a look at an appropriate table from the recent published journal as an example. Figures or pictures are useful to proceed the section of results and discussion. You can choose colored figures, but too many colored figures are not attractive at all. Drawing structures in chemistry papers is crucial. Nowadays, convenient software such as ChemDraw is available. You can draw the chemical structures easily by a simple selection of your journal within the software. In addition, you know a current IPAC name when you draw a structure on the screen, including stereochemistry. For example, the bottom structure is named as such here. Graphical abstract table of content is occasionally asked to submit besides a regular abstract and keywords. It is a visual summary of main findings of the article to capture the content of the article for readers at a single glance. So it is a very important. Grammar errors and misspelling do not give a good impression at all to the editors and the reviewers. I strongly recommend you to use spelling and grammar check software at least once before submission, though not perfect, but helpful. Authors normally revise or rearrange one's manuscript several times before submission and get confused during the process. Numerical check is important for compounds, numbers, reference numbers, and so on. It is generally important as authors' ethics and plagiarism and fabrication should be avoided at any price. On submission of paper, some journal editors ask you to suggest reviewers, names, or article, and even occasionally wish to hear something antagonistic reviewers from you. But please note that these your suggestions are helpful, but they are not always considered in the actual peer review process. More importantly, do not ask the editor, who is a reviewer, at any stage. In case of revision request required, answer completely and politely to the reviewer's comment and answer to every comment based on the evidence upon submission of the revised manuscript. In case of rejection, do not be too disappointed. Refuse the editor and counter-argue based on your reasons, or immediately resubmit or better paper to the second best to another journal with given suggestions or helpful comments. Keep in your mind that the resubmit paper might be sent to the same reviewer by chance who has formally rejected your paper. The world is so small. The paper is published by the name of authors to the best of their own knowledge at that time, so that the authors are indeed responsible for publishing. Thus, the authors may have a chance to, if necessary, to submit the additions and corrections afterwards. They could even withdraw the paper for some reason, though not recommended at all. In case of rejection, do not be too disappointed. Refute the editor and counter-argue based on the reasons, or resubmit immediately or better paper to the second best or another journal according to its new instructions with given suggestions and or helpful comment. Even after publication, responsibility, addition or corrections, withdrawal. And thank you very much for your kind attention and good luck for better research writing. And defeat corner 19th. Thank you very much for kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your extremely illuminative lecture. It was great to listen to Professor Yoshifuji, where he illustrated editor's outlook towards a research paper at all the necessary ingredients required in a paper before publication, down to the finest details. Thank you, sir. Thanks once again.
I would like to also say a few words for Professor Yoshifuji.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Yoshifuji, very much. You accepted our invitation, and it was great.
With pleasure.
Yeah.
With
Thank you
pleasure.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, I would like to remind the audience that all the questions will be answered at the end of the technical session. So in between, you can use your chat box for this purpose. Now, the second renowned speaker of this technical session is Professor S.D. Samant. Professor Samant recently superannuated as Professor of Chemistry at the Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. His research interest ranged from mechanistic organic chemistry to new methods of organic synthesis, sonochemistry, microwave chemistry, and catalysis. He has supervised more than 54 PhD scholars and has numerous research publications to his credit. Professor Samant has active memberships and is on the executive council of several societies such as the Indian Chemical Society, Indian Society for Surface Science and Technology, Catalysis Society of India, and the Society for Materials Chemistry. He has also chaired the vice president and later president of the Indian Association of Chemistry Teachers. Now, without any further delay, I would like to transfer the platform to Professor S.D. Samant for his most awaited lecture on thesis writing. Sir.
Thank you, madam, for the nice introduction. And at the beginning, I am very thankful to all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation on the platform of IS, the institute with which I am associated for a long time. Now, I am going to talk about thesis writing, and this, my presentation is based on the checking of more than 60 PhD thesis and guiding more than 55 PhD students. So whatever that I am going to present in this presentation is based on experience, and those who are now the research guides who are present in this audience can agree with me, point to point. And the students, PhD students who are attending this seminar will get some essence, will get some hints or the important tips for writing thesis.
Thank you, sir.
The beginning is what is PhD research. About 30 minutes are there, so I want to compress my lecture, that PhD, when I'm talking about a PhD research, you do not know for a good research, you do not know the exact outcome, and the topics evolves over time. So therefore, I always say that don't view the research as something which is static, and there lies the importance of academic research. Why am I saying specifically academic research? Because in academic research, we get freedom with respect to the execution of a project. Now, PhD degree is about acquiring the ability to define research problems and solve them, and importantly, communicate one's work. This word communication is very important. All along in all the lectures yesterday and today, we are talking about this basically scientific communication. Now the thesis should provide, your PhD thesis should provide evidence that you are successful in this. Now there are stages in PhD research like background, then you take admission, then research problem is given to you by your guide. You make some hypothesis, do literature survey, plan, do experiments, verification, validation, and then comes the thesis writing. And alongside you can have publications and if possible patents. Now all these stages in the research should be reflected in the thesis. A good research topic which you have taken, a research should be guided by questions always. And the answer should be useful for some purpose. That means it is explorative. And the question should not anticipate obvious solutions. And basically everything should be interesting to you. So therefore the PhD topic which you have selected should be narrowed down suitably. It should be solvable and manageable. And this again you have to demonstrate in the thesis. What I want to show at the beginning is what you are showing in the thesis. Now that at the initial stage you are doing literature survey, reading, you know how to handle the instruments, you have basic knowledge of the subject, and you develop your practical hand. Again, it should be demonstrated in the thesis. You are doing literature survey, reading. First you read to explore, then you read to focus, and finally you read to understand. So reading has to be critical. Research is not about believing, but about asking questions. So always read. And this again is reflected in the thesis. So when I'm reading the thesis of a student, in that case, I come to know how efficiently he has done the literature survey. Literature survey is extremely important because it gives you an idea about what is already known, what is not known, and what do I need to know to solve the problem. And therefore, from a broad area, you are focusing down to your actual work. This again should be demonstrated in the thesis. I'm repeating this sentence, which everybody should take as a message. What is to be demonstrated in the thesis? At a middle stage, you are doing experimental work, accumulate data, analyze that, draw the conclusion. This again should be demonstrated in the thesis. Now, before writing a thesis, you should have very good laboratory records, daily records, compilations of final procedures. You have your products with you, you have discussion notebooks, progress reports, everything should be there before starting this thesis writing. Now I'm coming to the thesis. Now, we have been talking about project writing. Yesterday we talked about project proposal writing, and then extensively we have seen how a paper is written. Now there are three questions which comes to my mind. When I'm writing any scientific document, first question which comes to my mind is who is writing. Second question which comes to my mind is what for is writing. And the third question which comes to my mind is that who is the reader, to whom I am addressing my written material. If these three questions are properly answered, in that case you will never go wrong. Who is writing the document, what is the purpose of writing the document, and the third one is to whom I am addressing. So who is writing a PhD thesis? The PhD candidate under the supervision of a guide. Important point is under the supervision of guide. Sometimes I have seen some guides take a stand that it is the student's document and let him suffer. If it is badly drafted, let him suffer. But I don't think that is a good policy. PhD thesis is a candidate's contribution, but it is under the supervision of guide. Now, if you take a bunch of published papers, will it form a thesis? Again, there are misconceptions, and this I have seen while evaluating thesis. So my question is whether you take, suppose I have published 6 papers, put the papers together, can it form a thesis? Answer is clearly no. And interestingly, what I'm doing is now when I'm guiding the students, I tell them, look, you compare research paper, examination answer book, and a thesis. And what do you find? Open question in that, take a research paper and ask just 3 questions. Who is writing, what for he is writing, and what is the audience? And then compare with examination answer book and thesis. And so many interesting points will come out. I'm not going to discuss that in detail here. Address to whom? Now specifically target your thesis at the referees who are going to evaluate the work. And in general, the peers. The referees might not have worked in your exact focused area or they are not experts in your area of thesis, and examiners need to be told therefore about your research clearly and they should appreciate your work. This is the objective of a thesis. Now, general format of a thesis, for which every university has got some regulations, And generally in any university regulation, you will find these points, that it should be the candidate's own account, it should be original, it should be an integrated whole or present as a coherent argument. These words are taken from a standard university regulation, and it should be give a critical assessment of the literature. It should describe the methods of research, discuss results and demonstrate how they are advanced the knowledge. It includes a full bibliography and references. It should demonstrate relevant research skills and be of publishable quality. Nowadays, UGC is giving a lot of emphasis on publication of PhD thesis, PhD work, and also translation of the work, which means you have to find out some application. Now, every university stipulates some norms regarding the format of the thesis, like what should be the paper size, what should be the printing, binding, etc. Now, second question is purpose of thesis. Now, purpose of thesis for PhD thesis obviously to get a degree. Everybody will say that, okay, finally it is meant for degree. But remember that the work, original investigation, nobody has done that earlier. The work is done by the candidates. Certain words have italicized, because there are cases, many cases, where the referees become suspicious, about the person who has done the work. And that is in fact the purpose of conducting a viva separately. So work should be done entirely by the candidate. The work makes a contribution to the existing knowledge. Now the candidate's mastery of research methods and tools of the specialized field and ability to solve the problem, that also is the purpose of thesis. The work is of sufficient value to warrant its publication in a reputed journal. And basically this word, last word, comes quite often. It should show the scholarship of a candidate. Therefore, with this scholarship, the candidate later on, after getting the degree, becomes a part of the community of scholars. What is this? What should be the, so many, these are the questions which are frequently asked. Sorry. What should be the size of a thesis? Students should remember that size does not show importance of the thesis. Now on the net, this information you will get that the thesis of Nash was an extraordinary mathematician. His thesis was of 32 pages. He got later on Nobel Prize in economics, but this thesis also is available on the net. Just 32 pages. And the acknowledgement in the thesis is so small. Then Woodward, who is a great synthetic organic chemist, like our God, now he got Nobel Prize for art in synthesis. And now his thesis is 64 pages. And this thesis also is available on the net. This is the front cover page of the thesis. And his acknowledgement is only this. Why am I telling this to you is because nowadays the students are unnecessarily making a big issue of this acknowledgement and size of the thesis and so on. That is not proper. Now, therefore, on the net, you will also get information about what is the longest thesis available. And this thesis is a history thesis, which has originally 2,654 pages, which was later on condensed to 2,200 pages, which is submitted to this Constance University in Germany. Now, when to start writing the thesis? Now, it is actually a continuous process. Thesis writing is a continuous process. One of the previous speakers said that a publication writing also is a continuous process. And the same thing applies to writing a thesis. The required data have been, actually when you start writing the thesis, in that case, at least you should have complete data with you. Complete experimental work is over. You have relevant references. You have background knowledge. And most important, your guide gives the signal. Now the components of a thesis. Now thesis has a title page, which is the format is given by the university, where name of the candidate is there, then college name is there, degree, and your month and year of submission. Then there is acknowledgement. Then there are certain certificates which are mandatory. Then you give abstract, 1-page abstract, and which is followed by TOC, table of content. Now this table of contents should contain all headings and subheadings and their page numbers. Then you have mandatory things like list of tables, list of figures, nomenclature, general remarks, certain abbreviations which you have used. This also follows. Now after that there is an acknowledgement. Now sometimes I have seen students that they put a dedication, at the as a first page. Somehow I'm not comfortable with it, because what has happened is if one student does it, second student starts it, and then it discontinues. Now on the right hand side bottom you see this is the one dedication which I saw in recent thesis. 3-4 years back when thesis came to me, and the person has given this dedication. So you will agree with me that the things have become like a mockery. Now in the acknowledgement of same thing happens that people go on giving acknowledgement to so many people. Do not make the acknowledgement too long so that it will mask your own efforts. Keep this message in mind. Acknowledgement is not to please your friends. Now then there is the introduction. Now introduction develops a background of the thesis, very important. And it is a critical review of relevant literature. Critical word is very important because almost like 70% thesis, I find that they just collect the data and go on saying that X says this, Y prepared this compound, Z analyzed this compound, something like that. It is just a compilation. That kind of a compilation is not a critical review. In a critical review, you have to compare. You have to make your own comments. Out of 200 references, you may find 1 or 2 references totally wrong. Do you have courage to say that there is some problem in the reference, in the work? Then looking at this literature, you find out the gaps or lacunae. Then you should have comparisons and contrast. And whole thing what you are giving in the introduction should be readable. I suggest that this introduction part you give in present tense. Because science, when something is proved, something is done and proved, it becomes a present tense, it becomes universal truth. And universal truth is always put in the form of a present tense. Now this review of literature is relevant literature which is very focused, critical, it is not descriptive, comprehensive, it covers that entire area, it linked to the methodology in the thesis and summarizes the essential aspects. It gives a problem definition, it gives a hypothesis, very important point. In many cases I have seen hypothesis is missing. What for you are doing research? There is a research problem is not hypothesis. Based on the research problem, we make a hypothesis, possible solution, and that you are going to test in your thesis. This is lacking. Once you make a hypothesis, there are objectives which will be there at the end of the introduction. Now, objectives are approaches to solve the problem. Each objective has an associated task or approach to satisfy the objective and its potential impact. Then you give which methodology you are going to adopt. Once you complete this introduction, the second part of the thesis is results and discussion, which is the core of a thesis. At the end, I will show you that when you are preparing a thesis, you have to distribute the weightage. Some weightage to introduction, some weightage to results and discussion, and some weightage to experimental part. I will give maximum weightage for results and discussion. On the contrary, I have seen thesis where they spend 120 pages for introduction and maybe about 30-40 pages for results and discussion and about 10-15 pages for experiment. Very funny thesis also I have seen. So students should know very clearly that this is the core of your thesis, results and discussion. You obtain some results, you get some data, and this thing you have to discuss in the light of present theory. Now, presentation of result is very important, that the formats and data, you have tables, graphs, charts. Do not repeat unless deemed necessary. There are so many formats of presenting a data. It can be chart, it can be table, it can be graph, etc. I have seen sometimes students give a table, and below that the same thing you put in different format. That is not required. So decide about which is the most apt format for presenting the data, results, and use that. Then very important part, discussion of results. This is like a story, This is a core. Whenever I see a thesis, I like to read what is the discussion of the results the candidate has done. positive as well as negative results. Again, unfortunately, what happens is in many theses, negative observations are not discussed. My suggestion is that to discuss for any good research problem, there are always negative results. Why to hide them? Because negative results are guiding research of future generation. So evaluate the data with respect to the hypothesis proposed. Do you observe specific trends in the data? Can the data or observations be explained on the basis of existing theory? Is the analysis appropriate for the data? Then do the comparisons with respect to reported results. So every time in the discussion, you will have a back references that somebody has done previous work and whether my work is in consonance with that or disagrees with that. So all this kind of a discussion becomes a very nice story. Now in the discussion, you give possible limits to confidence, reliability, validity of your work, attempts at theory building. Do the attempts to theory building or reconceptualization of the problems, and results and discussion you put in past tense because you have done it. This is my suggestion, that results and discussion you take in the past tense. Now the methodology which you have adopted, that methodology if you want to describe in results and discussion. So for example, which precautions are needed? Then what are the limitations of the methodology? What is the justification of the methodology which you adopted? That everything will become part of results and discussion. Now all our knowledge has been built up communally. So scrupulously acknowledge in your own work every intellectual debt for ideas, methods, and expressions in appropriate form. And please remember, giving credit is not like giving money. It does not diminish your share of credit. So somebody has said that very warmly you have to acknowledge, For example, somebody has given this. That you say that in an inspiring paper by somebody, I was inspired, and we developed the foundation of our work. So acknowledge weaknesses in your approach too. Now another thing which I have found very, very common, is that the students give a table, For example, I have given an example from organic chemistry. There are substituents and there is a yield of reaction. Yield say in unit time, say 1 hour, yield obtained in 2 hours. Now they give the substituents and yield. And below that they write like this. I'll give 15 seconds to you for reading what is given here. Now what impression you get? Are you not getting an impression that whatever that is given in the table is put in words, nothing else? So what am I conveying? Why am I increasing the size of my thesis by writing something which is given in the table in the form of words? This is not called discussion. Students should remember that if the students understand this point, my job as a referee will be very easy and perhaps I will enjoy that work, But it's very common, majority of the thesis give like this. What I will prefer is like this. Take 10 seconds to read. This is what I will appreciate. This I call as a discussion, and which unfortunately is lacking in the case of many theses. So give maximum, this requires training. This requires very good knowledge of the subject. This requires thorough understanding of what you are doing. And then at the end, there are conclusions and guidelines for future work. Then the third part is materials and methods. Materials used, sources, specifications, methods which are used, synthetic methods, analytical methods, computational methods. Then style, unit, specifications, spectra, table. This whole thing you generally put in the past tense. Then you apply plagiarism check to your work. This now become mandatory. Sometimes in my institution, it is done by our library. Then after that, there are appendices. Include extra material that does not need to be included in the body of the thesis. See, earlier, we used to put spectra abundantly in our thesis, but nowadays, spectra are put in the form of appendix, so that details that would clutter your eloquent description is avoided. That comes as a separate part. Then copies of your publication that arose from the thesis can be placed as appendix. Parts which would disturb the flow of reading, well-known facts, lengthy derivations, sample calculations, long tables, background information, spectra, they will form appendices. The published papers may constitute a part of the thesis provided the papers are substantial, self-contained, and published in reputable peer-reviewed journals. The candidate was one of the principal authors of the paper, and the work was performed during the period of PhD registration. I have found sometimes people give papers, put papers as in the thesis, and the paper has no relationship with the PhD work. Avoid that. The thesis includes a substantial introduction to the methodology employed that puts the paper in the context. Then these are small things like formatting of a thesis, which I can skip. And this again, my previous speakers have spoken about the style of giving the citation or bibliography. So I will not discuss that in detail. This I will skip because there are various styles and these are already have been discussed abundantly. Now this comes the last part, maybe few more minutes I will take and close. That, okay, a student has to write a thesis, then decide about the size. For example, typical size may be say about 220 pages, 250 pages. How many pages I want to devote to introduction? How many pages I want to devote to results and discussion? How many pages I want to give to experimental? And how many pages will be for references? Now this is called sometimes roughly weightage. Weightage is to different sections of a thesis. And what I feel is like this, that your introduction can be about 10 to 15%, result discussion can be 60%, 55-60%, and experimental may be about 10 to 15%, and references obviously will occupy about 10%. And whenever you are doing this, preparing a thesis, always never forget to take backup. Time to time go on taking backup. Backup not on one pen drive, maybe two pen drives, separately, so that nothing is lost. But very important point is about you decide about how you are going to write a thesis and what should be your weightages. Once you write a thesis, then take help of your friends. I'm not talking about guide. A guide will come at a later stage. But checking and rechecking of a thesis is very important. And here, you have to take help of your friend. Earlier speakers spoke about this aspect of taking help of a peer friend in checking a manuscript of your paper. So ask your friend to read and comment. And then somebody has said that experts are good, but non-experts are also good. And that is in the context of this checking. Each reader is going to give you additional information, additional suggestions, and make your work the writing more and more clear. Now here, while writing a thesis, prior publication is beneficial. Suppose you have published 3 or 4 papers earlier. In that case, you get a practice of writing. Then your papers are reviewed by your peers, and they give comments. These comments will be helpful to you for improving your work, improving your writing. Always take the reviewers' comments very seriously. If you cannot convince the reviewers, you won't probably convince your examiners. And finally, when you submit a thesis, you have to convince your examiners. So this point becomes very important. Once you are convinced, once you publish papers and then all that, the comments are addressed, then you are comfortable. Then you have nothing to worry about anything. So with that, I will conclude this brief presentation. And the PhD students who are there, I wish them success in thesis writing. Thesis writing is a very tenuous process. And I have seen sometimes the students, they simply break, at the time of writing this, they simply come to me and say that I cannot go beyond this, it is too much for me. So it creates a tension. But if this preparation is there, they are well prepared and they understand what to write. They have got this preliminary preparation. In that case, thesis writing becomes very easy, and I have seen cases where the thesis writing becomes enjoyable. Enjoyable both to the students and to the guide. So with that, I will stop. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thanks. Over to you,
Thank you,
madam.
Professor Samant. Thank you, Professor Samant. Bansal.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for such an impressive and inspiring speech. I hope all the research scholars must be motivated by sir's lecture, where he has elaborated all the nook and corners of a good thesis writing. Thank you, sir, for this informative lecture once again.
Thank you.
Now I would like to request Professor Yoshifuji and Professor Samant to share if their schedule permits them to take any questions.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Ms. Manjinder Kaur was trying to ask something. Manjinder, can you help me to get your question again?
I think the question is that, madam.
Yes, sir.
The question is that whether the problem statement can be given at the end of the introduction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The answer is that problem statement, definitely. Problem statement is followed by hypothesis and followed by objectives. So if you keep that order, that can be a subsection in the introduction at the end.
Okay. Okay.
Now,
anybody else for some questions?
Come to valedictory now. It's long.
Okay. Okay. So with this, we come to an end of our second technical session. And now I would like to request Professor Pradeep Bhatnagar, Dean's Faculty of Science, IIS deemed to be university, to share his views on this webinar. Sir.
Good evening to all of you. And as we know that the research has become an integral part of both the academic institution, imparting higher education, and institutions created for the research. Besides the self-satisfying aspect of the act of research and dissemination of the new information to others under the ownership of researchers, the research output is also a major factor for assessing the competence and the achievements of the individual as well as the institutions. Research and the publication process are built on trust based upon the basic belief that information and data are collected and reported honestly. Researchers must present all results, including favorable, unfavorable, and null findings, without falsification and misrepresentations, so that the resulting literature can be used as a very reliable basis for the further work on their field. Research findings are truly impactful only when publicly shared and communicated. So where to communicate or publish, how and where to disseminate the new knowledge. In earlier times, this was usually done first at a meeting of academic bodies, societies, where the participating expert would discuss the new findings, and this could be then be published as part of the proceedings of the meeting or could be published as independent monograph of the book. Publication of conference proceeding continues as a forum for the dissemination instead. The most common mode of dissemination of research output is in the form of publication in research journals, where the manuscript submitted by the authors is subjected to peer review by expert before being published. In recent time, the practice of sharing the new knowledge prior to formal publication in the research journal is to make the output available in the form of preprint through individual or the institutional website and or through the organized preprint archives. Preprint archives publish the manuscript as submitted by author, subjected to some journal conditions, but without any prior pre-review. This provides a free eternal open access to the original research output. Preprint archives facilitate post-publication peer-reviewed, since any reader has the possibility of posting comments on the published material. This can help author in improving their work and in preparation of the final manuscript for publication in peer-reviewed scholarly journal. Preprint archive help authors claim priority and also help in curbing idea plagiarism that can sometimes happen in the process of conventional publication in peer-reviewed journals. Preprint archives are becoming common as they provide free open access to new findings without any hindrance. Research output available on the preprint archive is also being increasingly accepted for assessment of individual or by the institutions. I'm sure that our young energetic researchers must have benefited by the deliberation in these 2 days webinar. Information shared by a very senior expert will definitely going to help them to improve their technical writing skill of research paper, articles, or research proposals, and also help them in maintaining ethical standard in their research as well as in their research publications. I'm very much thankful to all of the resource persons for sparing their valuable time for our student in this webinar. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Now I will like to hand over the session to Dr. Manisha Patni, Organizing Secretary of this webinar, to take over for the report sharing. Manisha.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pragya. Good evening to you all. It is indeed my privilege to present the report of the 2-day international webinar on scientific writing and propose a formal vote of thanks. The Department of Chemistry, IIS deemed to be University Jaipur, organized a 2-day international webinar on scientific writing on 27th and 28th November 2020 to introduce the participants to the different facets of scientific writing, plagiarism, and scientific misconduct. We are very happy to share with you all that the webinar received overwhelming response and more than 1,200 students, research scholars, and faculty members registered for it. The webinar was also live streamed on IISU YouTube channel. The webinar commenced at 3 p.m. sharp on 27th November with the inaugural session seeking the blessings of Almighty. Dr. Ashok Gupta, Chancellor, IIS University, and Chief Patron of this webinar, extended a warm welcome to all the resource persons and participants. Thereafter, Professor T.N. Mathur, Vice Chancellor, IIS University, welcomed the delegates. The third speaker in the inaugural session was Dr. Rakhi Gupta, Registrar, IIS University, and National Convener, Research Convention 2020, who acquainted us with the genesis of this mega series of research convention. Professor D.V. Prabhu, General Secretary, Association of Chemistry Teachers, shared with the delegates the establishment, 2 decades long history, and evolution of ACT along with its manifold national and international activities, programs, and events that have become the association's substantive programs. Professor Brijesh Pare, President ACT, in his presidential remarks, acquainted the delegates with the aims and objectives of this webinar and said that this is the first of its kind of designed and executive research convention for postgraduate students, research scholars, and faculty members. The inaugural session was followed by 3 technical sessions spread over 2 days. The speaker of first technical sessions were Professor Georgi Kaglevich, Professor Martin Rudd, and Professor Sandeep Verma. Professor Georgi Kaglevich from Budapest University of Technology and Economics, who is also the editor-in-chief of Current Organic Chemistry and member of editorial board of Heteroatom Chemistry and Phosphorus, Sulfur, Silicon, and related atoms. He delivered a talk on development of results during research, some examples from organophosphorus chemistry. We are grateful to him for sparing time and sharing his research work. The second lecture of this session was delivered by Professor Martin Rudd from University of Wisconsin, USA. Being an editor-in-chief of a reputed journal, his talk entitled on the topic, Getting Your Research Published, focused on understanding of editorial processes and what editors look for. We extend our heartiest thanks to him for sharing his research insights. In spite of his vacation time, he made an effort and recorded his lecture for all of us. The third speaker of this session was Professor Sandeep Verma, Secretary, Scientific and Engineering Research Board, Department of Science and Technology in New Delhi. He delivered a very informative talk on project writing. He shared with the delegates the different research schemes and portfolio of SERB along with the nitty-gritty of project writing. The session ended with a question-answer session, and we are very thankful to Sandeep sir for sparing time despite of his busy schedule. At the end of the first day, a formal vote of thanks was proposed by convener of the webinar and head of the department, Dr. Pragya Sinha. The second and third technical sessions were held on the second day, and the day commenced with the Professor R.K. Bansal's lecture on common mistakes in writing a research paper. He deliberated on important sections of research paper like format of the journal, reference style, and citation in the index. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your experience of writing and reviewing research papers through your lecture. We really learned a lot. The next lecture of this session was delivered by Professor Ayan Datta from Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, who is also the Fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry and recipient of DST SERB Distinguished Investigator Award. He deliberated on effective scientific manuscript writing. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insights in such a lucid manner. It was information-packed, exceptionally stimulating. In the third technical session, Professor Masaki Yoshifuji from Tohoku University, Japan, explained the editor's perspective about a research paper in his talk. Being a member of the editorial board of Heteroatom Chemistry and Phosphorus, Sulfur, Silicon, and related atoms. Thank you, Professor Masaki, for your insights. Professor S.D. Samant, former president, ACT, in his talk, guided all the participants in how to write a thesis so as to showcase our research at its best. He talked clearly, highlighted the pattern of different sections of a thesis. Thank you so much, sir, for your thought-provoking and inspiring lecture. In valedictory session, Professor Pradeep Bhatnagar, Dean Faculty of Science, presented his concluding remarks. Thank you, sir. We are indebted. At the end of the webinar, Dr. Manish, as we come to the end of the program, I take this opportunity to thank all those who have helped us in successful conduction of this two-day seminar. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to Chief Patron of this webinar and Chancellor of the IS University, Dr. Ashok Gupta, for his incredible leadership, timely and proper advice, and the freedom in decision-making provided to us to make this event of international stature. A big thank you to you, sir, for providing all organizational and infrastructural support to organize this webinar. My special gratitude to our Vice Chancellor, Professor T.N. Mathur, for his constant support. Our sincere thanks to Professor D.V. Prabhu, Professor Brijesh Pare, and all ACT Executive Council members for giving us the opportunity to hold this webinar at IIS University and providing continuous support and advice which have greatly helped towards the successful organization of this two-day event. My thanks to ever-smiling, never-tiring Registrar of the IIS University and National Convener of this webinar, Dr. Rakhi Gupta, for her leadership, encouragement, and extensive support provided to us all. I sincerely thank the member of the advisory committee for their valuable suggestions, especially Professor R.K. Bansal for his inspiring mentorship. My thanks to Ms. Priyanka Rutprem, Dr. Pragya Sinha, and Ms. Chandni Mathur for moderating this event so effectively, efficiently. I take this opportunity to thank all the faculty members, all the technical committee members, Mr. Harvansh Singh, and others for their unwavering support. My thanks to all faculty members of my Department of Chemistry for their ready and willing involvement in the successful organization of this webinar. Last but not the least, thanks to enthusiastic participants. I'm sure they must have been benefited by attending this conference. Thank you all once again.
Thank you, Manisha. Concluding this international webinar on scientific writing, on behalf of IIS deemed to be University Jaipur, an association of chemistry teachers, I once again express my deep gratitude to all the luminary speakers and dignitaries on the platform, delegates, research scholars, and students to make this event a great success. We long to have more such lectures in near future and wish to have your gracious presence. Thank you once again. There is an important announcement that the link for the feedback form is now live in the chat box. We request you to kindly share your feedback by 7 p.m. to help us to issue your certificates. Thanks a lot. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Professor Masaki. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
being there all through and, for your wonderful lecture.
Oh, thank you
And
very much.
we also have other members from ACT. Dr. Brijesh is still here. I think I can see him. Thank you, Brijesh, sir, for your continued support, continued encouragement, I would say. I mean, it's a continuous thing from your side all the time. And thanks to DV Prabhu, sir, the ACT members, and IS University team. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to all the participants for being there and for the patient attendance, for being patient about this. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.